It began with a dusty clothes bag that became trapped in a forgotten, dark corner where nothing should have been. Tucked away behind a silk dressing screen in the secret chambers of Clarence House, a building where every single article of clothing is painstakingly documented, dated and catalogued, between a cold stone wall and a heavy old campaign trunk. Neither an archival detective nor a senior palace courtier found it. The age of Prince Louis was 8. While waiting in the next room on a family trip to London, the young prince had tracked a fallen toy behind the heavy dressing screen. As he crept across the glossy floorboards, his tiny fingertips made contact with the rough canvas of an old traveling trunk before they came into contact with something long, heavy, and obviously out of place. The large, velvet-padded vintage clothing bag was buried deep into the shadows to hide it from the royal household servants' daily rounds. On the upper corner of the bag, beneath a regal crown encircled with laurel, 4 faded characters, I, Elizabeth Regina, were embroidered in tarnished gold bullion thread. "Why is Gongan's big velvet cape hidden behind the wardrobe?" Louis naively asked his father, Papa, as he unzipped the top corner and saw the glittering cascade of crimson velvet and gold oak leaves. That one innocent query immediately upended the tranquil routine of the castle. Prince William looked into that bag and realized what was going on. It wasn't a misplaced heirloom. It was the most beloved and constitutionally protected ceremonial garment in modern British history. Queen Elizabeth II's 1953 coronation robe of state had been surreptitiously removed from restricted archive storage, concealed within Queen Camilla's private dressing room, and prepared for a clandestine alteration only hours before a global press conference. Before we take you inside the dawn confrontation, where Prince William forced open the palace closet, please take a moment to support our station. If you favor protecting Princess Diana's lineage from palace politics and preserving Queen Elizabeth II's sacred legacy, then like this video, make a comment below, and subscribe to Crown Watch with alerts enabled. Thanks to your support, we are able to keep offering you these daring, in-depth royal investigations. To understand why a single piece of fabric could trigger an emergency constitutional crisis, one must understand how the British monarchy functions. In such establishments, clothing is not fashionable, that is, a sovereign record. The palaces are owned by the National Trust, the royal jewels belong to the state. The clothes worn at the sacred anointing and crowning are among the few objects that preserve a single monarch's eternal spiritual identity. According to British constitutional protocol, Queen Elizabeth II's 1953 coronation robe is a Class I royal restricted item. Following her official funeral, the late Queen left explicit written instructions regarding her coronation regalia. It was to be stored permanently in the climate-controlled cellars of Windsor Castle, never to be used, worn or altered by later consorts. But behind the scenes, Queen Camilla's private staff had been quietly producing an exquisite graphic design, ahead of an upcoming visit to St. James's Palace by an international state. Camilla intended to appear in front of international media cameras while wearing the late Queen's coronation velvet, which had been discreetly altered by a private tailor to match her own frame. Her wardrobe staff had created an official styling tag that read, "Main presentation look heritage-focused regal symbolism." By doing this, she would obfuscate the difference between Elizabeth's historic reign and her own, projecting herself as the ultimate living symbol of royal continuity, while covertly gaining personal possession of objects meant to pass to Prince William, Princess Catherine, and their progeny. Windsor received the notice from Clarence House in 20 minutes. At 4:52 a.m., there were 3 slow, heavy knocks on Sergeant Ian Merrick's barracks at Wellington Barracks. Sergeant Merrick, a veteran of Royal Heritage Security, who had spent 8 years recovering lost national treasures, answered the door of a senior official from the Royal Liaison Office, holding a sealed red envelope, stamped with immediate eyes-only heritage restriction clearance. A typed custody verification discovered within the Windsor Vault archives revealed that the 1953 coronation gown was missing. Next to it was a short, handwritten instruction in Prince William's characteristically firm hand. The Queen was never supposed to wear her robe again. Definitely not rebranded. Keep it safe. There aren't any exceptions. Merrick didn't hesitate. He wore the grey tactical working outfit, which allows security officers to pass through royal hallways without setting off alarms, rather than formal ceremonial gear. He took out a customized archival shipping crate with a biometric digital seal and an interior temperature control made of acid-free fabric from his locker. Then he loaded the package into the back of an unmarked Land Rover that was driving through the foggy dawn streets of central London. At around 6:15 a.m., the vehicle quietly went through the secondary gates of Clarence House. The residence was already humming with early morning activity as florists carried bouquets down the lengthy hallways, lighting specialists put up equipment in the great drawing rooms, and caterers prepared for noon banquets. To the staff, Merrick was simply another typical logistics contractor. With a calm, unwavering determination, he walked down the south wing dressing hallway to the private dressing suite. Outside the door, a valet was running a high-press steamer over a rack of formal evening wear. Beside the rack was an empty presentation mannequin with a typed label affixed to the velvet frame. The main presentation looks at the heritage theme. The mannequin's shoulders were still exposed, waiting for the crimson robe, which was still concealed inside the private chamber. Without requesting permission, Merrick knocked once and went into the room. The dressing room was infused with the scent of lavender, cedar, and high-stakes stress. Across the far wall was a huge custom-built cherrywood wardrobe. The room was equipped with hand-fitted polished brass fixtures. Lady Ashcroft, the Queen's senior wardrobe mistress, held a clipboard like a shield while standing behind a folding table decorated with antique brushes and diamond tiaras. "You are not authorized to be in this suite," Lady Ashcroft said icily as she moved between Merrick and the closet. Merrick placed down the cargo crate and spoke calmly and clearly, "Royal, collection, and sovereign heritage security. I need unrestricted, instant access to those clothes." Before Lady Ashcroft could respond, a chilly, piercing voice from the nearby private hallway sliced across the room. "I assume you carry a signed warrant," said Sergeant Queen Camilla as she walked into the room. She had a porcelain cup in her hand, was dressed in a long quilted morning robe, and lacked the warm, phony smile she usually flashes to the public. Her eyes were fixed on Merrick with unflinching aristocratic fury. "Or have we abandoned the privacy principle entirely in my own house?" Camilla set her cup on an antique hatbox and continued, "Do we now consider old velvet to be treasonous, or does my closet represent a security risk?" Merrick bent his head rigidly like a soldier, "Ma'am. A sovereign object with Class 1 regalia marks must be inspected on site if there is a verified suspicion that it has escaped restricted custody without the proper authority." With a disdainful motion, Camilla pointed to the cherrywood closet. "There is a formal royal engagement reserved for every item behind those doors. Are you implying that I have stolen my own clothing?" "The robe in that cupboard isn't from your closet, ma'am," Merrick responded coolly. "It is a component of the sovereign trust of the British realm." Camilla's private legal attacker barged into the room and spoke rapidly. "Sergeant, this is a major procedural violation. The Queen's private office and the Lord Chamberlain must be consulted for any official inquiry into household property. The examination is legally mandated, time-sensitive, and non-negotiable," Merrick retorted. "This directive comes from above the Lord Chamberlain." Camilla lowered her voice into a deliberate, dangerous pitch while folding her arms. "Are you aware of the consequences of breaking this chamber?" "Yes, ma'am." Merrick spoke without waiting for another word. Lady Ashcroft objected, but Merrick ignored the legal assault and placed his hands firmly on the polished brass knobs of the royal wardrobe. In that world, the act was revolutionary. For 20 years, Queen Camilla's private chambers had been regarded as an untouchable sanctuary, and a simple no from her lips would end any conversation. But tonight, that unwritten privilege disappeared. With a deep, resonant crack of the brass locks, Merrick unlocked the enormous cherrywood doors. Inside, the wardrobe was immaculate. Color-coordinated silk day gowns were arranged on wood racks, velvet boxes held crested ancestral jewels, and ceremonial gloves were folded neatly in silk bags. However, there was a single long travel bag on the lower level that was clearly heavier, older, and seam-aged. It was hidden behind a line of modern overcoats. Every other piece of apparel in the room had a modern printed tag with an engagement date. This purse had no name, only 4 gold bullion characters embroidered on the velvet hem. Merrick took down the heavy brass sipper. The smell of ancient archive preservation pervaded the room, thick and dry. Reaching inside, Merrick carefully brought the crimson velvet out into the overhead light. Thick, luxurious royal crimson velvet with gold bullion oak leaves, hand-stitched in full relief, crushed under the weight of the tapestry, causing it to fall apart. Beneath the wide collar, the original woven tailor's tag from 1953 was immaculately maintained. Eid and the consecration of Ravenscroft in 1953, Desmation 0004. The room fell into an oppressive, startled silence. Lady Ashcroft's clipboard dropped from her hand and struck the floor with a dull thud. The legal assault came to a complete halt. Camilla took a calm, deliberate breath as she stepped within centimeters of the fabric. She calmly clarified that it was intended to be a symbol of reverence and historical continuity between reigns. The British people welcome a tangible connection to our past. Merrick kept eye contact as he dragged his portable scanner across the robe's inside seam. Continuity forbids unauthorized appropriation. Ma'am, this isn't a costume, it is a sovereign legacy. The computerized scanner chimed with a clear, sharp tone and showed a bright green alert. A restricted heritage asset class 1 hold has been confirmed to go to Windsor Vault. Before Camilla's legal team could come up with a counter-argument, there were 3 loud, deliberate knocks against the open door frame. The door opened back and Prince William stepped into the suite. He was wearing a dark navy overcoat and had an icy appearance. He had no press entourage, no personal security guards, and no administrative secretaries. Beneath his left arm was a thin red sovereign folder. William strolled to the center of the room and observed the open wardrobe, the chaise lounge's crimson velvet covering, and the nervous looks on Camilla's staff members' faces. "Sergeant Merrick," William uttered in a cool, collected and lethal tone. "Sir," Merrick answered. William jumped to his feet, placed the red folder on the marble side table, and opened it to discover one yellowed parchment protected by archival laminate. He put the document on display so that everyone could view it. The selected coronation gown 004 will remain in the Windsor Sovereign Vault. After William read the text out loud and said, "This is the Sovereign Regalia Covenant signed on the 2nd of June, 1953 by Queen Elizabeth II. It won't be changed. It cannot be transferred for private use or worn by any succeeding consort without statutory, parliamentary and sovereign permission." William closed the folder and fixed his gaze on Camilla. "Was this transfer authorized by the Royal Collection Trust?" William demanded something. Camilla held her head high in an attempt to project steady authority. Senior advisors recommended it because they believed it would improve the Crown's standing at a period of transition. It was never intended to leave the palace's walls. William shot back, moving in the direction of the guy who had suggested it. "Determine the advisor, make the requisitions order, get the autograph of the king." There was silence in the room. Camilla did not give a name because there was no such authority. This was not an innocent styling decision. William said, his voice rising with angry, controlled force. "This was an intentional attempt to claim a heritage that is not yours and to erase the past." Camilla narrowed her gaze. "You discuss heritage as though I haven't contributed anything to this family. The public desires clarity. They want the crown to stay in its current position. You do not honor what came before by plundering it." William shot back, his words cutting across the air like a razor. "My mother, Princess Diana, had her jewelry, philanthropic gifts, and even her memory painstakingly reproduced and strewn across this house for nearly 30 years. I had no influence over that process, which began when I was 15. William stepped forward and gestured to the open doorway where little Prince Louis had learned the truth. "You stole my mother's peace. You took her place. But you will never take away my kid Louis's royal ancestry or tamper with my grandmother's sacred legacy." The mention of Prince Louis broke Camilla's heart. She recognized that this was no longer a quiet internal conflict. It was a steadfast defense of Princess Diana's lineage. Another attempt was made by Camilla's legal attaché to intervene. "Your Royal Highness, we must act with the utmost prudence in order to preserve the reputation of the kingdom." William attacked so forcefully that the man instantly became silent. If this robe had appeared on a broadcast stage today without formal statutory clearance, I would have ordered an immediate, unannounced forensic audit across every wardrobe, vault and private apartment in Clarence House and Highgrove, William warned sternly. Every diamond, art and ancient cloth would have been checked against the 1901 sovereign inventory. There was silence in the room. An official sovereign audit was the one thing Camilla's private office feared the most. It would mean opening every locked safe, examining every inherited item of jewels, and revealing to the public the vast collection of royal heirlooms held behind closed doors. William turned back to Camilla for the final time. "You may wear whatever jewels and robes befit your appointed title." William instructed, "You will never be able to wear what made Queen Elizabeth II special. Pack the car, Sergeant. This robe returns to Windsor Castle before midday." With no further words, Prince William turned on his heel and walked out of the room, leaving behind an atmosphere of total, irreversible defeat. Sergeant Merrick immediately began the process of packaging the archives. He put on white conservation gloves, using soft silk buffers to fold the bullion-embroidered sleeves inside, and placed a strong, acid-free mounting board beneath the rich crimson velvet to keep any fragile gold thread from contacting or breaking while in transit. He lowered the robe into the climate-controlled security container, fastened the crossed velvet straps, and locked the box with an encrypted biometric seal. Merrick covered the closure with a holographic crown tamper seal, a digital lock that, in the event that it is broken, will immediately raise an alarm at Scotland Yard. When Merrick removed the case in the corner of the dressing suite, he noticed an amazing detail that no one had noticed. A large, specifically constructed leather traveling trunk that fits the dimensions of the coronation robe and is partially packed with velvet pockets. The metal latch plate of the trunk bore two initials, CR. The discovery of a customized travel trunk revealed a startling revelation. There was more to the robe than a fleeting photo in London. In order to completely remove it from public records, it was being prepared for covert transit to a secluded royal estate in Scotland. Merrick took a silent mental note, noted the serial numbers, and exited the suite without saying anything more. At 7:45 a.m., Sergeant Merrick brought the grey security container into the private courtyard, through the rear service entrance of Clarence House. The rear doors of the armoured transport vehicle opened, and Merrick heard a faint click of a door handle behind him. He turned and saw Queen Camilla standing on the stone terrace stairs by herself in the chilly morning air. Without help, cosmetics, or press cameras to establish the mood, she stood in her morning gown and watched calmly as Queen Elizabeth II's priceless 1953 robe was loaded into the safe van. Prince William stood behind the vehicle, observing with unwavering authority until the car's biometric green light came on. "The queue has been held, sir," stated Merrick. William turned to face his children's safe haven after glancing at the leaving vehicle. "Some moments in history only happen once," William remarked. "They are a product of the ages rather than self-centered conceit." A few hours later, Queen Camilla arrived for her scheduled public appearance wearing a modest, conservative navy day dress with plain silver trim. The waiting press corps photographed the event as if it were a typical morning, completely oblivious to the spectacular dawn raid that had just hours before preserved British royal history. 8-year-old Prince Louis, whose perceptive eyes exposed the truth, is living proof that Princess Diana's family will always defend the honor, dignity, and sacred legacy of the British crown. The late Queen's coronation robe is now securely kept in Windsor Castle's underground vaults under Prince William's sovereign authority. Did Prince Louis stop a major historical injustice for the royal family? What do you think of Prince William's brave decision to raid the wardrobe and save Queen Elizabeth's coronation robe? To honor Princess Diana's memory, like this video, leave a comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe to Crown Watch for our next exclusive royal investigation.